Alright, so I want to make a video updating everyone. Getting right into it, Canada's up to 93,456 confirmed cases, 7,550, sorry, 44 deaths. Alberta had just 15 new cases yesterday. Again, we 2, 3 weeks ago, we were having about 30, 40 cases a day. Now we're having like 20. We've had a few days as low as what, 12, 13, I think. So the curve continues to be flattened. Again, the curve, from late April, early May was flattened by the second week of May, and then, couple weeks ago, the curve was flattened from there, and then the curve has been flattened from there. So the curve has been trending down for about 6 weeks now, um, and it continues to do that. And I mean, the main point being is that I don't know what it's going to take. Like, I really don't know what it's going to take. I mean, I know I consistently point this out, but the government continues to beat around the bush and be like, oh yeah, we're doing so. Like, I mean, Kenny and these people have been saying, oh yeah, for like a month, they've been saying, oh, we're doing so good, we're reducing cases, but yet they seem to give literally nothing on, June 19th is supposed to be the scheduled quote unquote phase two, but yet I've heard nothing. And I really don't understand, because it's blatantly obvious that we should have been open like a month ago, even a little more. I mean, we had data, what, like mid-April, that the death rate was around the zero point 0.2 mark, and every single study or testing that's gone on since then has shown that that's relatively accurate, give or take a little bit, depending on your age and your health, if you have health issues. So, and yet we're 6 weeks, 7 weeks from that, and yet we still are pretending like this is this horrible thing that's going to kill us all. Like, just cannot stand it. And it's like, it's the other thing too, is that the protests and or rioting has been going on for what, 8 days now, roughly 9 days, and we've still seen no major uptick in cases, at least from what I've seen. And within the next 3 or 4 days, if we haven't seen it, like, I mean, I've mentioned, but we will know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was completely and utterly a fraud, and all the pain and suffering that's happened because of it was completely unjust. And the fact that people are completely up in arms against a small amount of racism that goes on in society, and there's tens of thousands of people protesting in hundreds of cities across North America, but yet nobody's protesting because, I mean, some people were, but they were viciously shunned. Um, Nobody's protesting because of that is absolutely insane. It just goes to show where society's priorities are. That when a political ideology can be exploited and expanded and pushed, then everyone's all for it. And the problem is that the left, the media, celebrities, they push it, and if you disagree with them, then you're the worst person ever. You're a terrible racist, even though you actually care more, because the rioting and um, the unemployment and the shutting down everything down is causing literally hundreds of times more harm to the black community than the small amount of any. I say small amount because there is some racism. It's not as bad as what people make it out to be. And again, the numbers bear that out. I hate to break it to people, but the numbers bear that out, both throughout history and in the present. The I mean, just take, for example, the Arab slave trade happened on a much, much larger scale, than the slave trade going to the U.S. And yet nobody know where are people guilting Muslims because they had way more slaves than, and it happened on a much larger scale than it did in the States, but yet no one's guilting them. So it's clearly, at the very least, partially a political thing, and I mean, it just fits right in that. You have the left and the mainstream media that whips people up into a frenzy. They kind of run on a half truth that racism is bad and racism shouldn't exist, but the half truth part of it is that it's not the most pressing issue, even facing the black community. The most pressing issues facing the black community is rampant single motherhood, rampant, not graduating from high school, gang membership, which is one of the symptoms of growing up in a single mother household, it seems. And yet, whenever you point that kind of stuff out, then you're viciously shunned. Again, thousands and thousands of blacks are killed every year by other blacks that is gang related, that is symptoms of growing up in terrible household, living conditions. And yet when someone points out like, hey, we should be worried about this, we shouldn't be worried about the small number of blacks that are killed unjustly by cops every year. And again, not that those lives don't matter. Nobody's saying that. What we're trying to say is that if you claim to care so much about uh, black lives, then you should focus on the area where you could save the most black lives, right? The problem is that people tend to not want to take responsibility, and their solution is, oh, I'm just going to find out a way I can blame other people for problems. And again, not that the police killings are in any way, shape, or form justified, but again, that the whole no justice, no peace mantra is completely thrown out of the window here because all the cops have been charged. I mean, the guy that killed him was charged with second-degree murder. I mean, he's going to spend 20 years in jail. So again, what more could you possibly ask for? And again, well, what they're asking for is literal bringing back lynch mobs. And again, how did that work out the first time around? How did that work out the first time around? Because last time, I mean, judging off this, stuff that happened, 100 years ago, people are still up in arms about. So again, you start lynching people because of their color of their skin, well, guess what? The pendulum will swing right back and kick you in the you know what down the road. So again, we have to wake up as a society and be like, there is a common sense middle ground here. Police brutality, racism is terrible and should be eradicated. But this white guilt, all cops are bad, all this crap that a lot of the stuff that BLM is saying in the mainstream media, especially, I think they're even worse than BLM because I think they're just mostly misguided. Um, that is what is causing most of the problems here. And to finish off the little rant is that they continue to vote for the exact same kind of people again. This is something that again I really can't stand about the left too, is that whenever you argue for a free market healthcare system, they'll always accuse you of, oh, you hate people and you want people to die and you don't care about the poor. But yet the left turns around, supports policies that kills babies, and again, regardless of your view on it, they're still neglecting them at the very least. They have terrible. They don't care about veterans. Again, look at how many homeless veterans are. Look at what the Trudeau government. Look at how they're treating veterans. Look at how they treat the poor. Again, the left always, oh, all our BS welfare policies help the poor so much. But you look at California. Look at California. They're the most liberal lefty state there is, and yet they have one of the worst rampant homeless problems. And they've the arguably. I mean, would be very confident in saying this. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think anyone would disagree in saying that they have the biggest gap between the rich and the poor, which is what the left claims to care so much about. And the problem is that the solution to fixing this issue isn't socialism. It isn't these stupid lefty policies. If it was, California would be the best state for this, and it isn't. It's the worst. So the problem is people need to look themselves in the mirror and be like, hey, we've been supporting policies that haven't been working, and we've been doing it for like 50, 60 years. We've been doing it for as long as we can remember, and look at where it's got us. We have to have systems that hold people more accountable, and we need to stop voting for people that only care about you when the election time comes around. Like seriously, it's disgusting, and I really can't stand how people accuse you of hating the poor when you point this kind of stuff out, because it's the policies that they voted for that are hurting the poor, and it's the policies that I'm against that actually hurt the poor. So again, it just really bothers me. So anyway, this is from Stefan Molyneux. He says, white people, stop apologizing for historical facts you had nothing to do with. The Jews, Arabs, blacks, and Japanese grovel endlessly and apologize. No, you're guaranteeing more abuse. And this is the problem, that when you give in um, to criticism that is unjust, you just guarantee that. And again, it's simply another way of putting it. When you let people take advantage of you, when you willingly let people take advantage of you, you guarantee that they're going to take advantage of you more. And we need to stop doing this. We need to stop doing this. And again, he points out a perfectly good thing. Almost every other major race has done this kind of stuff. Again, the Arab slave trade was happened on a much larger scale than the slave trade in the states, and a lot of those people were rounded up by other blacks, by other Arabs. Whites largely couldn't even go into Africa because so many diseases and so many bugs and snakes and stuff that if they bit you or stung you or whatever, you would die. Like nowadays we have, antibiotics and vaccines and stuff. You can largely get away with that, but back in the day you couldn't do that. So slavery was existed because other races willingly captured their own people and people for different kinds of people, and let it happen. So, and the other thing too is that there's several countries that don't allow immigration from if you don't fit the race. I mean, Japan, no, they bring in no, I mean next to no refugees from Africa or the Middle East. Mexico, again, they have it in their constitution that the country has to stay majority Hispanic. Israel, same kind of stuff. And you see all these countries that do this kind of stuff, and the only ones that get lectured are the white ones. And this is the problem too, that when people are posting in these whole Blackout Tuesday and these kind of posts disagreeing with people, what they're really trying to get across is that they're tired of being called racist and having to have this stupid white guilt for stuff that they didn't do. That's what they're trying to say. No one is justifying racism. I've yet to see. I have all these people I see on social media complaining about people in their comments saying, "Oh, these people are they're part of the problem," and yet they're just people that have simple disagreements. I've yet to see one person actually promoting racism. Like, not one. I mean, there probably is some, but I haven't seen any. So, this is from Mike Cernovich. He says, twice as many whites are killed. Twice as many whites as blacks are killed by police. Counterpoint, blacks are lesser overall percent of the population. Response, the percentage of deaths via police encounters match up to violent crime rates by respective racial groups. Finale, that's racist. And again, this is the problem too that I point out with people is that there's no evidence that blacks are disproportionately targeted by police. There's no evidence of that. And there's no evidence that blacks are in jail for more likely to be in jail. The evidence, the crime victimization surveys, the percentage of crime committed matches up very closely. And again, a lot of these are anonymous surveys too, so there's in no way, shape, or form bias. So um, the idea that and again, it's the same point being too, is that arguing that blacks are and again, racism definitely exists to some degree, but on average, what I'm talking about here is on average. Um, it's like saying that the jail system, which I think it actually is, but most people would probably disagree with you. Um, that the jail system or the legal system is biased against men because men are like what 80-90% of prisoners. Therefore, it must mean that the prison systems are biased and the legal systems are biased against men. Well, for starters, we know that men commit a lot more crimes. That's what people will tell you, but yet they conveniently ignore the fact that blacks commit more crimes too. So it's the same kind of thing. Um, so getting back to the whole virus thing, this is from the National Post, and it says. Virus unemployment could trigger more than 2,000 suicides in Canada, study warns. And again, I've been saying this for 2 months now, it seems, and yet nobody seems to care. Like nobody whatsoever. It's just in one ear, out the other. That the suffering that's going to come from this is going to be far greater, like much, infinitely times more greater than the suffering that, I mean, again, it's 95% seniors that are dying from this. Like the solution was it's been so blatantly obvious for over a month now that you tell seniors to stay at home, everybody else go on with your life. And again, you don't want to visit. If you do, social distance. Problem is completely solved. And the problem is that the politicians and everybody else is completely ignoring the science. And this is one thing to point out too, that whenever you're in a debate with someone about climate change or whatever issue, and they bring up the "you're ignoring science, all scientists agree" argument, just simply point this kind of stuff out, because if they're in the group of people that supports the lockdowns at any point past about late April, early May, I mean, by the time that it was, we knew that the death rate was 0.2, we knew that The people dying were overwhelmingly old people. We knew that it largely got bad in the first place because the government wouldn't close the borders. They did a terrible job managing the situation. If they're one of those kind of people, well, they're denying science that is blatantly obvious, so there's no reason to entertain any of their arguments. So this is from Dan Bongino. Again, this is something I pointed out, but I just wanted to point it out again quick. It's becoming crystal clear the blue state lock it all down governors and mayors are destroying their citizens' jobs and businesses, and the reasons for this are clearly political, not scientific. And again, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's no science backing up having things locked down for over a month now. There's none of this phase one, phase two garbage. No, there's no evidence behind. There's no evidence social distancing works. There's no evidence that masks have a significant impact unless you're already sick. None of this. There's no evidence behind any of it. And yet we have governments that are still pretending that that's the case. And it's absolutely disgusting because, again, they don't even believe what they're saying, too. They don't even believe what they're saying. And again, stuff like this is just proving in that 6-hexanammer 666 says, interesting to see the same liberals who a few days ago, or in this case, probably a little over a week ago, applauded wildly if people were arrested for not wearing gloves and are now horrified that people might get arrested for looting and burning businesses down. Again, this just goes to show just where things are at nowadays, that everything is just completely backwards, like completely backwards. Consistent implementation of laws, of rules is just absolutely out the window, like completely out the window long ago. And I've pointed this out, but again, so many people, most of them probably not people watching this video, but they just don't seem to get it. That again, like I pointed out, like you have all these people talking about, the idea of reopening Alberta, and you have these people saying, "Oh, harumph, I say we can't open Calgary. If we reopen Calgary, everybody's gonna die." And yet thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people gathered the other day for the protest, and yet nobody cared. Not one of these idiot Karens were having a hissy fit thing. Oh, people should be social distancing and they should be getting tickets and all this crap. So again, they don't actually even believe what they're saying. Again, if you don't even believe what you're saying, then no one should take you seriously. So anyway, I'm gonna leave the video there. If you'd like to make sure that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email if you haven't, or sorry, check out my PayPal and my my email in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last couple things, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already, and check me out on BitChute if you haven't already. All the links are in the description, so you can find them all there.